Good afternoon, everybody. This is Roger Thunder with the Red Road channel. I recently did a video on Leonard Peltier and the release of Leonard Peltier. It was just kind of a short thing. But I thought today I would get into it in a little bit more depth, the whole incident surrounding everything back that was going on at the Pine Ridge Reservation back in 1973. I remember it well, and I can actually say that because I was there in spirit, and I was in that time period and very close to that whole situation. Let's put it that way. Don't need to go into depth about that. But as I was rejoicing over the release, or the imminent release in February 18th of Leonard Peltier, who has been in prison for 5 decades, a Chippewa from the nation of Canada, and which is my roots as well. Same thing. That's why I actually took a more personal interest in this whole thing. We're going to get into it now, and I'm going to tell you exactly what went down, or as close to it as I can from my memory. I may make a few mistakes, so forgive me. I can't remember, things aren't as clear, but some of them seem crystal clear. So I'll probably call this video Chaos at Oglala, because that's what it was. I think in order to start this video, we must talk about AIM first, the American Indian movement of the 60s and 70s, which was like a lot of other movements of that time that I and others were involved in regards to standing up against, things like the war in Vietnam and just the travesties that were going on back then. And there were a lot of travesties. There was a lot of vicious stuff going on the West Coast, on the East Coast. So anyway, AIM, along with other people like, Black Panthers was a movement. There were a lot of movements back then. A lot of things were going on, a lot of rebellion against authority, basically, and the status quo and the man, as we called him. So let's start off with and I'm going to do this as a pictorial. I'm going to include lots of good photos, so here we go. Let's start off with this one. This is kind of one of my favorites. These are archival photos of that time period, actual photos. So here we have the march. Now the AIM movement, the American, let me digress here. Hold on, I'll come back to this picture. So this is the American Indian movement insignia of that time. Now this might be a little bit newer. It's still in existence, although kind of obscure and let's say not out front, let's put it that way. But the American Indian movement was formed, remember Wounded Knee, and Wounded Knee I've done videos on. The original Wounded Knee was when 300 men, women, and children were murdered because they were associated with the ghost dance. This happened right there on Pine Ridge at Wounded Knee, and they were slaughtered and gunned down and buried in a mass grave, and there was no reason that should happen, and they were unarmed as well. If you look back in history, you can find out more about that incident, along with many others like the Sand Creek Massacre and that type thing. But this American Indian movement, this is the patch, and you'll notice the hand here, the red hand. Then you got 2 fingers up, which represent feathers, Now, also, I must say, back in that time period, that was the big sign for the, let's say, hippies of that era, in which I was. Let's put it this way: I was a hippie, I had long hair, but I wasn't your normal hippie. I was a person with indigenous blood, so I identified more with this than I did a lot of other things. Of course, I marched in protest and was brutalized by the police on the West Coast, not only because I was pretty well known in the musical arena with concerts at Love-Ins and stuff like that, but just in general, I was considered part of the group of people that were set upon. And back then, in like 1973, if you had long hair, you stood out like a sore thumb. And I don't care where you were, West Coast, East Coast, you were labeled immediately as a revolutionary or whatever, a threat. But we all had the peace sign. If you could see, I'm holding it up now. Peace, make, make love, not war. So this represented both of those things, in my mind anyway. And that was the whole deal back in the 60s. Everybody was an Indian. I mean, in heart, because if you look at that movement, you see that's the way everybody that was associated with the so-called 60s hippie movement, everybody was wearing beads, headbands, lots of leather, lots of beaded necklaces. The women dress that way. We all dress that way because it's kind of a phenomenal thing, but the Native American spirit came out really, really strong in the 60s. It's almost like the spirits descended on a group of people and guided them, basically. And so if you go back to that time, like Haight-Ashbury and all the big love-ins and all that stuff. If you walked into a love-in, you thought you were in a tribe. Basically, people had pitched tents, bands were playing. It was a joyous, fun time, but it was a very, very hardcore time as well. Because a lot of us got arrested, a lot of us got beat up, a lot of us got put in jail. I think I was arrested 23 times. Caveat to that, none of that's on my record for the most part because it was a matter of harassment, put you in jail overnight. Some guys got hung in jail, ended up hung. All kinds of things were going on. It was not what you would call a peaceful time. That's what we were all for. That's what we all wanted. But that's not the reality of the situation. It was a very chaotic time. People think of the 60s and they just look at it as peace and love, and everybody was getting high, and yeah, that's true. All of that is true, and I'll say that right out. It's a good thing. But there was a strong movement against the Vietnam War, and a lot of our brothers and sisters were going over there and dying, and it was a horrific time, and you had to stand up to it. People were burning draft cards and marching in the streets in the hundreds with signs and placards and just making themselves known. So the whole ambiance back then, I'm trying to give you a picture of what it was, a real picture, having lived it, of the brotherhood and sisterhood of the people, which was just patterned after the whole feeling was Native American. Again, everybody dressed that way, everybody acted that way. So when this arose, when the situation on the Pine Ridge Reservation arose, then everybody was like, boom, tuned in immediately. It was a major, major deal. I think it, in my mind, again, I've said this before, it defined that era. So basically that's kind of like a prologue into into what I'm going to get into now, which is kind of fun stuff mixed with not so much fun. Now let's look at this picture again. I love this picture. You got Dennis Banks, like I said before. You got John Trudell in here. I think that's him on the horse. I don't know who this is. It could be Anime Aquash, which I'm going to talk about later, but it just doesn't look like her. But I'm sure she was in this crowd somewhere. And then you got this guy back here. Just think about the spirit of this. Look at this guy with the feathers in his hat, armed. Everybody's armed. Everybody's indigenous and revolutionary. And you might say, wow, that's radical. Is that radical? Well, let's take a look here and see what was going on at that particular time in history. I hate to show this guy's ugly mug, but I got to start with this. This is Dick Wilson. Dick Wilson was a conniving, low-life, backstabbing SOB. And he was head president of the tribal council at the Pine Ridge Reservation. And he had sold out in several areas, all right? First of all, he was a skinhead, basically. Him and his crew were skinheads. They had short hair. Everybody else, all the natives on the res, you know, the hippies, the ones that were coming in to support and all that, it was all long hair, okay? But this guy had short hair, as you can see, and he sold out to land organizations that wanted uranium off the res. That was one thing he did. Another thing he did was get in bed with the feds so that he could kind of be above the law and have some power and do things that he did, okay? And some of the things he did was this armed militant group that he formed that was supported by the FBI, armed by the FBI, wore camouflage, had advisors, the whole ball of wax, would go out and terrorize the people in Oglala and murder them, extort them, torture them, do all kinds of things like that. Reign of Terror, it was called. It was called the Reign of Terror. Now, the people on the res were beside themselves because they had no backup. They had no way to fight this. Elderly, young and old, and men and women, indigenous people that wanted to live in their own way and do their own practices, like the Inipi, the Sweat Lodge, and like the Sundance, and smoking of the sacred pipe, and living in the traditional manner. That's what these people wanted to do. They just wanted to be left alone. This guy was killing them. He was sending in, again, they were called goon squads, and they were goons. And so when this happened, AIM, who I talked about earlier in this video, the American Indian Movement, who for the most part up until that time was basically involved in charity and helping people and doing that type of thing, providing food and just helping in any way they could. It was a movement, but they had it. They had it with this situation. And so basically what happened is like, let's go. These people need support. So people came in from all over. And a lot of the people that came in weren't residents there. They were just part of AIM. But they were natives, and there were some non-natives. See, it didn't matter back then. It's not like, the term wannabe or anything like that. Basically, it was, if you were aligned in heart and spirit, and we're all brothers and sisters on this planet, we're going to help you, and you're here to help us. So that's what happened. And this guy is the one that created it all. So we've stared at this ghoul long enough. Let's switch to a better picture. Here we have a photo of the crew in AIM, and you can see how they're dressed. It was cold then. It was very, very cold, and they were not only fighting the Goon squads and all this, the military, but they were also fighting the bitter cold too, and the conditions there. And they took over a church, and they pitched some teepees around different places, and they had pretty good setup, pretty organized, and they decided to make a stand against this. And so as soon as that happened, you had federal troops already on the way. You had military vehicles, half-tracks, tanks, uniformed soldiers, all coming in. And you even had helicopters coming in above them, and you had a cadre of FBI agents, and you also had a cadre of FBI sharpshooters coming in against these guys. And let's not forget, these guys just had the normal firearm. They didn't have automatic weapons or anything like that. The other guys had automatic weapons and grenades and fully equipped. But some of these guys were Vietnam vets. Some of these guys had come back from Vietnam, so they weren't dummies as far as firearms and that type thing. Here's another photo from that time. It's a little blurry, but you can see one of the brothers here holding the gun and sitting on a horse. And you got this guy with binoculars spotting to see what's out there. And like I say, you had people that were unified together and working together as best they could during that time. This was really a beautiful act to go in there and put your life on the line against the dark forces, the cabal that existed back then. Been in existence for a long time. The dark forces, the ones that want to depopulate indigenous people and depopulate not just in America but in other places as well. Another photo of a person standing at sentry, as a sentry to guard against the Goon squads, or to be aware or give the word that they were coming. Damn, that looks like me. Whew. Huh. Love this photo. Really do. So a lot was going on back then, and that was scary. No, now, here we go with the John Fire Lame Deer. John Fire Lame Deer is a sacred pipe carrier. Carried the bundle that was passed down from the white buffalo calf woman. He was leader of the Sundance at that time, and he also was spiritual mentor and advisor to the AIM movement. Now, I didn't know this recently, but he was on another section because Fool's Crow was there as well. Don't have a picture right offhand, but I've showed him in other videos. But John Fire Lame Deer was the real deal, and he was there giving him spiritual support and in the traditional way of doing that. And let me see if I can find another picture. Here's another picture of John Fire Lame Deer, and this was taken at a Sundance. And he's got his cowboy hat on here. Right on, brother. Cowboy Indian, love it. And so, again, he was the spiritual advisor, which is a big deal, really. It shows that no holy medicine man like this is going to take sides with somebody that is not spot on. And so it's definitely great to have somebody like this in your corner when this stuff's going on. Now, I'm going to just start featuring some pictures here of people that were involved. No, this is Leonard now, or later on in life as he was in prison. Leonard Peltier, who was getting released on February 18th. And I'm kind of doing this in tribute to him, really, because he's the last of the Mohicans, literally. Or I should say the last of the Chippewa. The last of the movement, the AIM movement at that time. He's legendary. I'm going to show you another pic. That's kind of like a artist's rendition, a very good one. There you go. Now this is how he looked back then. And you can see he has all the traditional clothing. And this vest here, I can personally attest, Métis, or Métis, however, because that's my mixture. This embroidery on there is unmistakable, that Chippewa influence. The mixed, actually, there was a lot of French and Indian mixed in with it. And I don't know where this is. This could have been an interview right after he got arrested, or I don't know. But he was young there, and this is a great shot of him. Yeah, brother. You had Dennis Means, Russell Means, excuse me, Dennis. Dennis Banks. I get Dennis Banks and Russell Means. Well, they were like joined at the hip anyway in this whole thing. So that's Russell Means, who later on became an actor and has been in scores of movies, Last of the Mohicans and all that good stuff. This was before then, though. A young man here styling out, brother, with his shades on. Miss you. He's not with us anymore. Remember I said they pitched teepees and had councils and that type of thing, councils of war. It was a war council, yes. And you got Russell Means here, and you got Dennis Banks. And I can't quite make out who that is. Awesome photo, really. Just a totally awesome photo. Trudell was somewhere nearby. You can bank on that. Another picture of Dennis Banks, one of the main leaders of the American Indian movement. And very young in this picture, as was Russell Means. Great shot of him. I got some personal shots, actually, that I'm going to show you of him that I got from a friend, Sheila Hollowhorn, a descendant of Chief Hollowhorn, and she lives in Flagstaff. I hope you don't mind me mentioning your name. I'm sure she doesn't. She's a good friend. Haven't seen her in a long, long time though. Model and actress, and did some acting on Longmire. So the next picture coming up is a personal picture given to me that's not out there anywhere, except in her possession, I think. Could be. We don't know. I don't know. It could, anything could show up on the internet nowadays, but this is a great shot. This is Dennis in later years, and this is my friend Sheila. And this is his son, I'm pretty sure. And they have the drum there in front of them, the traditional drum, and they're all clasping hands. Great shot. This is Dennis, the guy I showed earlier in later years. Here's another great shot of Dennis with a tomahawk and drum in front of them. Hoka hey, warrior up. And these guys are doing the hand clasp here as well. Spiritual unity. Spiritual unity. I believe this is Sheila's, or was at the time, companion. Let's put it that way. Great shot there. Just thought I'd throw these in, personal photos. Now let me talk about Anime Aquash. Beautiful woman. This is a photo that I worked on that was kind of messed up. So I did the best I can on this because I liked it, because it was a picture of her at that time, at that place. And she was, when you talk about the Native American indigenous culture, it's matriarchal, and they had a lot of power, and this woman was a strong, strong person, and she was also Chippewa, so she knew Leonard in that respect. And she was a person that came from Canada, and as a young girl, and I really want to do her justice here. I hope I say everything right, but I'm just trying to remember. She arrived in Boston or somewhere on the East Coast, and started immediately working on behalf of the indigenous people in that area. And there was some type of kitchen there or something going on there, and there was also homelessness. There was other things she addressed, and she was very, very like moving forward, and definitely had a mindset to help people, and had a really, really good heart. And what else can I say about her? She was a warrior woman in the spirit of Lozen, or Lozen, the Apache warrior woman. In that spirit, she was not shy of learning all she needed to know about ballistics and firearms, and warriorship, and treating the wounded, and which she did, and fed and helped nurse people back to health that had been shot at Wounded Knee at this standoff. And I think this was taken on her wedding day. And this is not part of the messed up photo. This is actually kind of like, I'm not sure, it could have had to do with that ceremony, or it definitely was a native face paint, or war paint, something of that nature. And then you could see she has a little red ribbon going through here. Now, the reason that I put her up is it's kind of a sad story, really. There was utter chaos. There was utter chaos going down at this time. And AIM had very altruistic motives, and so therefore they were infiltrated almost immediately by people that were coming in to support them, and different characters. John Graham was one of them, I believe his name was, and he was an informant for the FBI, and this woman here busted him. In other words, knew what he was, and there's a whole long story about that. a guy that infiltrated into the group, looked like them, dressed like an Indian, wore turquoise jewelry, just like back in the day, when on the West Coast, if narcs infiltrated the group, they dressed like the group, they got high with the group, they did everything with the group. It was, everything, right? You would just think they were another normal person in the tribe or whatever. So this guy did infiltrate. She found out who he was, and next thing you know, there's all kinds of rumors flying around this way and that. And let's put it this way: AIM was under a lot of pressure because they would actually, I don't know, maybe even let the FBI, if they knew somebody was, if they knew, they wouldn't tell the guy they knew, but they would use him to find out what's going on with the FBI. It was a weird, strange, strategic war situation. It was violent. And everybody had guns. That's just, that's a given. And so Anna Mae was involved in, outing that guy as far as being a snitch. And so from that time on, the FBI hated her, and they tried to put a jacket on her, is the story I heard. They tried to put a jacket on her, and she trying to turn her. They always try to turn stuff around. The FBI does make the person that busted the informant look like the informant, that type thing. So they framed her and they spread rumors about her. And even members in AIM had questions, and Leonard had questions, and Leonard even admits that he got in the car with her and questioned her, just bullshitted with her and said, what's going on? What's going on with the rumors? Because they were kind of like allies, contrary to what he was accused of later. So that's kind of her story, and she ended up, as she was making, she did a lot of things, smuggled food into the people because they couldn't get food in, the electricity was cut off. It was rough. They were really trying to come down on these people. And so she did smuggle food in to help the people there, and she went in and out several times. One of her journeys, one of the trips, whatever, she was missing. She didn't show up. People got worried. Well, long story short, some guy was out on the res, near the res somewhere, a road coming into it, and found the body of her. Found her body. Didn't know it was her. Nobody knew it was her. And she, they utterly disrespected this whole thing, the feds. Nobody knows who did it. Nobody knows who did it. Now, I got a good guess who did it, and whoever did it was either feds or in alliance with the feds. That's all you need to know. Because nobody else would do it that knew her, and she was like a charismatic leader person, well known, well spoken of by everybody. So she was assassinated with a bullet shot to the back of the neck, kind of like assassination, like mafia style, up that way. And they didn't even know that the bullet was there. That's typical of using a smaller caliber bullet for that kind of thing. If you want to make a hit on somebody, you use a small caliber bullet. This is well known in the mafia circles and History Channel and all that stuff. You just put a small caliber handgun to their head, back of the head mostly. You don't want it, And that's kind of what happened to her, and I'm sorry about that. I love this lady, this woman. Beautiful, beautiful woman. So I had to talk about you today, Anna Mae. And I'm glad I did. And so this I didn't want to leave this part out because it was sad, you know. I said, well, why talk about that? But a lot of people were killed, 60 people, 60 plus, maybe more. People were killed in this whole thing. Standing up like they should stand up. Like they should have standed up, and they did. I just thought I'd pop this up real quick because it looks like an artist. It said it was an artist's rendition of anime. And I like this. I like the look in the eyes. Definitely looks like her eyes. So the spirit is there. Thought I'd just throw this up real quick. I want to put this picture up of John Trudell, no longer with us. Rest in peace, brother. You're in that land now that is happy. Activist, artist, musician, poet, speaker, writer, good person. Really, really good person. Spokesman later on in life for the indigenous people. So I want to mention John. And he was part of the Dennis Banks, Russell Means, John Trudell. He was part of the crew. He was one of the leaders. So, yeah, brother, think about you too. Yeah, this is Myrtle Poorbear, but before I get to her, I want to still say one more thing about anime. She was involved in the movement of helping indigenous women who've gone missing off the res, hundreds and hundreds, and couldn't find them. And so, you know, what can I say? Now, this is Myrtle Poorbear, who was a poor bear in this incident, truly, because she got set upon by the FBI, and she was probably around 15, old enough for her to claim that she could have been married to Leonard Peltier. Okay. Leonard, during all this, they all finally dispersed and fled. Leonard was in Canada. Not all of them dispersed. It was just, it's a long story. But this woman was, you know, because Leonard was in Canada and they had to extradite him back to the United States so he could stand trial. They needed, the Canadian government has always been kind of for Natives going way back. They demanded an extradition order, or why, and and this woman was chosen by the FBI when she was a little girl, young, to be intimidated and threatened, and her family threatened, and all kinds of bad stuff. Because remember, the Goon squads were killing everybody. All right. So she was scared. So, she did a bad thing, but then again, how much could you take? So anyway, she signed a thing saying she was married to Leonard, and she saw Leonard do the killing of the 2 FBI agents that came on the res. This is what the trial was about. And basically signed papers. And so in between the first trial of Dino and Rabadou, where they were tried earlier and acquitted, well, in between that time, they were getting Leonard out of Canada on extradition, and she's the one that got him out, and I think she testified at the trial against him and perjured herself, and a bunch of other evidence wasn't allowed, and they really went full court press on Leonard because they had a vendetta. And the 2 guys that had come on to the reservation, okay, let me see if I got a photo on that. I'm not sure. I'll just go full screen here a minute. So I think that there's other explanations in order about what was going on here. Leonard was involved in the incident at Jumping Bull, and Joe Stunts was killed there. Some young Indian guy one of the only guys that was there to. Some others left because they knew the FBI was coming in, and the FBI had plans to assault Jumping Bull. See, it's Jumping Bull. If I didn't say that before. Compound there, and so they knew. Some knew, but one guy said, I can't leave these old people alone. I got to stay here. I got to defend them. I got to do something. And he stayed there, and he got shot between the eyes by an FBI marksman. Taken out immediately, and they came in there like you wouldn't believe. And this, I do believe this was around the time, very close, that the agents, the FBI agents, I don't even care to mention their names, really. All you got to know is that they were 2 FBI agents. That's all you need to know. Part of the problem here is showing up, claiming that they came in to arrest somebody for assault and stealing cowboy boots. That was their... boy, I don't know who you could sell that to, but they came in and immediately were identified. They were actually, I think, pretty sure of it now, they were actually following Leonard and 2 other people in a truck. And I don't know, at some point that truck stopped or something happened and there was just a hail of bullets. And there was also a hillside there where bullets could have been coming from. And that car, that FBI car, I mean, it got riddled. It got riddled with bullets. And those guys were on their radio calling out and all that stuff. And they got out of the car and somebody went up. And to this day, we don't know who it is, all right? Somebody went up and... basically executed them at that point. They were wounded anyway. So they just executed them, and that's the story. That's what the story is. So that's what this whole incident, one of the things that is surrounding this whole incident is that these 3 guys were accused of doing this, Leonard and Robidou and Dino. And they were accused of doing this, but never was proven. It was acquitted, okay? Now let me just make a point here. I've explained to you about all the violence that was going on, and how this is all erupted, and how these poor people are being assaulted. And it's like, if you weren't by now having red flags and going, go in there and kick those fuckers out. The ones that are causing mayhem on innocent people. And if this was back in the days of Crazy Horse, okay, or let's say in the Apache Desert, in the Arizona desert, the Apaches, Geronimo. What do you do when somebody tries to kill your family? What do? And not only that, your tribe, your family, your tribe. And this is just in a long history of this shit happening over and over and over and over and over again throughout the history of America. Feds, government people, interfering on all reservations. This is just not happening this is happening right now. All the time. Not with the Hopi though, but it did happen to the Hopi, who are the most pristine traditionalists in my estimation, where They don't even like people coming on their reservation, and their reservation was huge. It was huge at one time, and now it's got shrunk down to just around Flagstaff in Arizona and out on the mesas. So all of these communities, the Hopi were set upon by the same people, and only they wormed their way in through Christianity and all this, and the government, and they offered this and threatened that and did that. And let's not forget Leonard Peltier, just like these kids at the Hopi Res, was a product of the boarding schools, which they ripped kids out of the family environment and their native traditional environment and stuck them in a Christian school. All right? That's where Leonard came from. He was abused big time by the Christian white man. So Leonard was for his people. I should say is, but when I'm speaking I'm talking about that time period, and he still is. He still is. He's a legend. And a lot of people are crying tears of joy that he's out. And he's not quite out yet because he doesn't get released till the 18th, but we're he'll be out. So, when I did my video on Leonard, I was giving you a little piece there, but this is the whole story. This is all woven together. This could be a documentary as far as I'm concerned. I mean, there's a lot of good movies out. Incident at Oglala and by Robert Redford, and there's a book by Peter Mathiasson called In the Spirit of Crazy Horse that you just can't read that thing and not shed tears and get depressed, basically. I mean, you read it a while and it's like, holy shit. And this is all about the incident. If you want to know in depth, blow by blow, you should do it just to fact check me, but again, I take the fifth on perfect memory, but I think I pretty laid it out pretty good. And again, I lived in that time, and I'm proud of that. We need more of that now. It's like if you live back in that time, the picture that I painted just now was brotherhood. It was love. It was a bonding against the evil, the colonialists. Okay, that's a real good name. I like that name, colonialists. Colonize. Get rid of any ideas or belief systems that are in your way. Terrorize. Man, I could go on and on and on about the Federal Bureau of Intimidation and the shit that they laid on that whole scene. Even John Trudell got his house firebombed, and I know people that knew him. So, it's amazing, really. Now I hope I shedded. I hope I have shedded my skin. Seriously though, I wanted to shed some light on this whole situation. And so I hope that helps in a way. It helps me. I just like talking about it, and I like reminiscing, and I like that feeling of what it is to be united in brotherhood and tribalhood and tribal ways and have love there, have real love and camaraderie, but also have that warrior side, that hardcore, we're not going to take this shit anymore, warrior side. You don't see that nowadays. Not in this country, anyway. Just like, okay, I'll ramble on a little bit more here. There was a recent protest at the Dakota pipeline about the water rights, and you guys all remember that. Well, that whole situation was kind of a clusterfuck in the sense that the poor people that were protesting, and I was in contact with a woman that was in there, they could easily get injured and drug away and set upon and beat if they're going to do a protest like that, but they had no leadership. They had no command center. They, not like in the AIM situation back in 73 at Wounded Knee, 73 at Wounded Knee. They didn't have any leadership like the AIM leadership or anything like that. They had a few vets that were volunteering to come in at the last minute there, but no organization and no instructions as to how to conduct a protest like that without getting your ass killed or injured. That was my beef with it, all right? And I made it known that was not a good thing, and there was no leadership because people were climbing hills, protesters, and they were trying to get through barbed wire fences and trying to get to this place that they wanted to get to up there, and that's all well and good. But if you're going to do something like that, you don't just haphazardly stumble in there and think you're going to get there. And AIM doesn't think that way. That's not the way you do things. So the advice from me was you need to kind of duplicate the kind of clothing that you're going to see on a SWAT team or a military team, okay, assault team, let's put it that way. And if you don't want to be armed, okay, it wasn't like get armed. I didn't say get armed, and they didn't. And I would never, that's up to the leadership. And I was just talking to somebody. But the point is that I told them at the time that they should pad up and gear up and at least have some kind of defense weapon, like maybe a walking stick or something to fend off whatever was coming their way. That would have been the proper way to do that, but that's not what happened because that tribal chief, and I can't even remember his name. See, I don't remember important names, and to me this person wasn't important. He made a deal with Obama, and Obama didn't keep it, and basically more political corruption and bullshit is what it amounted to. That's why that thing happened the way it did with water cannons and people getting beat up and drug off and drugged to jail, and all kinds of things happened there that really didn't need to happen if there'd been proper leadership. And this is not armchair quarterbacking, because I was giving advice to somebody that had gone there and was talking with some people and trying to make sense to them. And that's it, but that was kind of a sad thing. So I wanted to draw that correlation there between, if things are done today, they need to be done properly. It's not like you just go out willy-nilly and have no plan or no command. So anyway, I've rambled on enough. I hope you enjoyed parts of this anyway. Subscribe to my Substack if you can. Links in the show notes. Helps me if you do the paid way, which is you get a lot of material on there that you won't get on here. Writing and commentary and things like that. So I guess I'll just leave it there for today and be on my way. So happy trails and Oglala, aho.